Hello again. I was thinking yesterday about the various laws, such as the Race Relations Acts and so on, which supposedly improved life in Britain and helped stop people discriminating against members of ethnic minorities. I was prompted to think along these lines by a passage in one of my books. It's a biography of barrister Norman Burkett. He's very famous. He went on to become a judge and so on. Let me just mention one of the aims of the first Race Relations Act in 1965, which was that it outlawed discrimination in places such as hotels on the grounds of race. What viewers may not realise is that it was unlawful many years before the passing of this act to discriminate against people by denying them a room at a hotel. And in this book about Norman Burkett, it gives a case in 1944 involving the West Indian cricketer Sir Leary Constantine, of whom I'm sure many viewers have heard. He was refused a room in a London hotel during the Second World War, simply on the grounds that he was black. He then brought a legal action against the hotel, and he won. This is because under common law, hotels have always been obliged to offer rooms to people. This was specified in the 1956 Hotel Proprietors Act, under which a hotel can only refuse to let a room to a guest who turns up with no booking if that guest appears unable or unwilling to pay or is in not a fit state to be received. For example, he might be drunk or aggressive, something of that sort. But in 1944, 20 years, more than 20 years before the first Race Relations Act, Leary Constantine won his case for discrimination because he had turned up, been refused a room, and he went to court over it. The hotel acted unlawfully. Which makes us ask ourselves why a separate Race Relations Act was needed when the law was already clear. In the description of this video, I give a link to the actual act of 1965, the Race Relations Act, and you'll see it makes mention of hotels and so on, and it mentions the Hotel Proprietors Act. Why was it necessary to introduce a separate act bringing race into the matter? Later Race Relations Acts brought rented accommodation into the business, brought them into the reach of the law as well. And this is even more difficult to justify. If I'm renting out a room in my house or something of that sort, why should I not be completely free to choose to whom I let it? If I'm selling a house, that's really a private arrangement between me and a prospective buyer. Why should the law concern itself with trying to regulate to whom I rent a flat or sell a house? I'm not sure that I approve in principle of the state involving itself in what is simply a transaction between me and somebody else. The law of unintended consequences, of course, operated here, and today we find ourselves in a grotesque situation because of this legislation. Ethnic minorities frequently want somebody of the same ethnicity, religion or nationality in their properties, and they often arrange to sell houses only to members of their own particular group. This kind of thing happens among Orthodox Jews in parts of London and Manchester. It happens with Muslims, Romanians, Chinese people, and any number of other groups. One way of doing it is if a Chinese person who wants a Chinese tenant, he'll put an advertisement in Chinese in, say, a newsagent's window or on the internet. Someone might put an advertisement in Romanian or Urdu. So the Race Relations Act in that way is you can drive a coach and horses through it unless you happen to be white. In other words, racial and religious discrimination is rife in the housing market. Everybody knows this, there's no secret about it. But the only people who are ever likely to fall foul of the law are white British people. Just imagine an English person who tried to rent a flat only to another white Christian. I wonder how long it would be before that resulted in a court case. Then too, there is the question of inciting racial hatred. Now it might be, and it almost certainly is, undesirable for anybody to hate those who belong to a different ethnic group or follow a different religion from that which they follow themselves. If you feel that way though, and you actually dislike somebody on the grounds of their ethnicity or religion, should it be illegal to encourage others to share your point of view? In the comments on this channel, we often see people who dislike Jews, and sometimes they try to get others to share their opinions on the subject. I think we all know what I'm talking about here. I think most of the regulars on this channel have seen some people on here who've got Jews on the brain and say unpleasant things or sort of slight things about Jews. I have no use personally for those types, but should such conduct actually render one liable to arrest? I'm not talking here about inciting violence, which always has been, long before any Race Relations Act been unlawful. What if I simply dislike members of a certain group or nationality and set out the reasons for my dislike and suggest that others might want to feel the same way? Why should there be a specific law against this? This is not to say that I think it would be good to behave in this way. I don't think it would be at all. But should it actually put you at risk of imprisonment? What do viewers think would happen if all the various legislation relating to race relations, hate speech, incitement to racial hatred and all the rest of it were repealed? Do they think it would make any difference to the way that people carry on? Would it actually harm society? Sometimes we take things for granted, and it's only when we stop to think about them that we suddenly realise that this or that feature of the world around us might actually be quite unnecessary.